Rorisang Lekalake, welcome to our DG Trends platform.
Thank you very much.
Now, you are one of the authors of a policy brief titled Does Less Engaged Mean Less Empowered?, which interrogates issues related to youth participation in political processes. In your view, what do you think some of the key challenges facing effective participation of young people in political processes are?
Well, I think that the first major challenge is the lack of information. So young people might be aware of their rights in terms of elections and electoral processes, but sometimes they're not really aware of other mechanisms of getting involved in participation. The fact that political engagement also occurs outside of the election cycle, which is only every 4 to 5 years in most cases. So there's a lack of awareness of the opportunities that there are to engage in civic organizations and opportunities to engage in the political process that don't necessarily involve voting, whether it's contacting their political leaders or having some other input into, for example, parliamentary processes on a bill that may be related to their own situation or rights. And I think that there are also social barriers to young people's participation in Africa in particular. I mean, we do find that worldwide young people tend to participate less in the political process than older people. But I think that in Africa in particular, there is a tendency for institutional barriers to young people's participation, say, for example, political parties, to be actually associated with social views about the place of young people in society, as opposed to, say, an actual rule that prohibits them from being included. And I think that also inhibits the role that young people feel that they can play in terms of political leadership, because they're seen as, because you're young, your place is not at the top. Essentially. So I think really it's about whether young people know what are the opportunities for them to have a seat at the table, and also for creating those spaces through perhaps mentorship, etc., especially for young women.
Especially for young women. Now, how can young people meaningfully seize the spaces provided to them to contribute to the development of their communities?
I think that the first thing young people can do is to try really to educate themselves as much as possible, not only about the rules and regulations, but about the spaces and mechanisms that are open. I know that from myself reading them that often bills and laws and policies are quite difficult to really get an understanding of what's going on. So when you do have a view, and even if it is a civics organization, when you do have a position to take on maybe something that's being debated in Parliament, it's very difficult to know how can you actually input your ideas. So one way that young people can overcome this is by creating networks, actually grouping together so that there's a skills transfer maybe, or people can share their skills. So if you, for example, even if it's a voluntary association that's not formal, if you have a lawyer involved and you have young people who have other skills such as communications, etc., and some from rural communities, etc., by talking through issues, by sharing the skills and knowledge, it's possible to then have a position and promote that position. And I think that young people can also use the tools that are unique to the younger generation as opposed to the older generation, which includes technology. So even though the social media space and internet access is still fairly limited in Africa, I think that those who do have that platform can use it to find other like-minded young people in the way that previous generations were not really able to.
That's a brilliant idea. Now, what other skills do you think young people need to effectively engage in political processes?
I think besides the knowledge of what actually it entails, and besides the skills it takes to actually create a network, to create a group of people, etc., which often comes with experience, it can't really be taught. I think young people also need skills in terms of really understanding how to put together a message and how to communicate that message. If they're going to participate in terms of, the non-electoral process, in terms of some sort of civic activism, etc., how do they craft their message in a way that gets the attention of the people that they want? I'll give an example from South Africa, since I'm based in Cape Town. There was the Fees Must Fall movement and the Rose Must Fall movement. Now, because these were university students, which is already a pretty elite group to be in tertiary education, they were able to use the skills not only in terms of what their message was, but how they portrayed their message to get first the attention of the news and social media, etc., which then got the government's attention. And then they had a seat at the table, the minister called them to speak, etc. Now, I'm not saying that this is easy, because for the average youth, this might not be possible, because there isn't those opportunities, etc. And that's why I think it's so important to have these networks and to have the skills transfer, so that young people can support each other. And by recognizing that if you live in a city, if you go to university, etc., you're actually in quite a privileged position and could help your peers in many immeasurable ways.
Rorisang, thank you so much.